All right. Well, welcome everyone to our first webinar of 2024. My name's Amanda, and I'm the Learning Program Manager at the IPAI. We're glad that you're all with us here this morning. Our focus for the next hour is on how to start a new year in the assessment office. We have a great panel today who are going to share their tips and tricks for a successful year ahead. So we're going to look forward to that. Some housekeeping items before we begin. We're going to start with a panel discussion that will take about 20 to 30 minutes. During this time, we're going to ask you to stay muted. Feel free to put questions in the chat and we'll address them if it's natural for those to come up during the formal panel discussion. At the end of that, we will open it up to Q&A, where we will allow you, if you want to unmute yourself. We want it to be very conversational, so if you have a question, please either unmute yourself or ask it in the chat during that time. Also, our recordings from 2023 from those
Assessor's office. This is
webinars.
Danny.
I'm going to go ahead and mute some people here so we don't have the background noise. Our webinars from 2023 are now available to watch those recordings. You can find them on our YouTube channel, or I believe they're also linked from our website. If you go to our main website and then go to the learning header, there should be a subheader titled webinars where you can find the links to our recordings that we had from last year. So if there was a webinar that you missed and a topic you want to revisit, those are available to view whenever you would like. All right, so it's time to introduce the panel. We have Chesley Leafblad, Kendall Easton, and Lisa Gasco joining us. I don't think I'm going to waste anyone's time having Chesley introduce herself. If you haven't met her yet, I'm sure this will not be the first time. But Kendall, can you take a second to provide us a little bit more about you?
I'm Kendall Easton, Supervisor Assessments, Clay County. I've been in the office since 2008, took over supervisor in 2015. Clay County is a pretty small county, southeastern Illinois, about 18,000 parcels.
All right, great. Thanks, Kendall. And Lisa, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lisa Gasco. I am the Quincy Township Assessor. I started in the Adams County Supervisor of Assessments office back in 1990. And then I was appointed to the Quincy Township Assessor's office in 2016. So I have about 31 years of experience in the assessment field.
Well, the ones that connect to the.
All right, great. Thank you, Lisa.
Mhm.
All right, so I am going to go ahead and hand this off to Chesney to start us off this morning.
Good morning. Well, thank you everyone for showing up, and I really want to thank Kendall and Lisa for joining us on this webinar. It's really essential that we have geographic diversity with those of us that are giving information to assessors across the state. And I also love when we get new people on a webinar that you maybe haven't seen as much as some of us that are IPAI instructors that you tend to see a little more of. So I am just so thrilled that they're joining us today, because what we're going to talk about today is going to look very different depending on where you are in the state. So the first thing that we do, and just to clarify, the slide that you're looking at here was developed for my office and is relevant specifically to Lake County. And so when you hear from Kendall and Lisa, there may be some differences in terms of how this looks to them, and so they'll share that with you. But I would suggest that you create your own version of this for your office so that you always have it as a resource moving forward. Because in the assessment industry, our job is very cyclical, and you're not doing the same thing in January that you're doing in May, that you're doing in October. It's all very different. And when you go a year and have to do something again, I personally sometimes forget what I'm supposed to do. Oh, wait, what are we doing now? So this can be really helpful, and specifically if you have new staff that you're trying to train, or if your office is in transition, as many offices are in the state right now, it can be helpful so everyone's on the same page. So the first thing that our office is doing is we are reposting vacancy reductions to full value for commercial properties. Not all counties grant vacancy reductions, so you might not have this as a task in your county. We're going to repost any one-year reductions. So if we made a reduction specific to condition or something that was temporary about a property, we're going to repost those values. We're going to correct minor factual errors that we found during board of review. So factual errors that aren't requiring a large value adjustment, and other miscellaneous corrections. Now, there's two ways to handle reposting corrections. So if it's minor and you just need to make a quick correction and it's not a lot of value difference, you can do it at this point in the process. However, if you're going to be adding value in, for example, you found a finished basement on a listing for a property and you have the option of holding that posting until later in the process so that you can capture the new construction value from that posting. So just so you know, you've got two options there. Next, we're going to look at some yearly changes. So bullet point 1, process map changes. In our county, we call them seg merges. We used to call them divisions. Some people call them map changes. So whatever you call them, you need to make sure that you process all of those before you move on with the rest of your work. We'll post any reclass or change in use properties. We'll take a look at our farm list. Are the properties that are contained in our farm list, should they still be there? Or do we need to move anything off or move anything on? We'll take a look at our permits and our field work for the year. Now, this step actually is going to be running kind of at the same time as the next step. So they're not sequential, they're happening at the same time. But we're going to establish our new construction cutoff. So for our office, if a property isn't completely constructed by June 30th, we're going to deal with it next year. And that's going to look different in particular with some of the people on this call and how they handle this. We're going to route our field work and get updated pictures on any of the properties or areas that we've identified we need new pictures. Pertaining to the valuation piece, we're going to take a look at our tentative factor. In Lake County, we've been told we'll probably have our tentative by the end of the month. In some other counties, if your board of review it is closing more recently, ours was finished up last year, you might not have your tentative factor until a little bit later in the year. But knowing what your tentative factor is really, really important for determining how you're going to handle your values in this non-quad year. We will run sales ratio reports for all of our assessment neighborhoods. We need to determine what our level of assessment is as a township, because that's what our COD is based on. It's your median level of assessment. The COD is based on the disparity, the difference between your median level of assessment and your averages, not 33 1/3. So I just wanted to point that out so you're aware of that. We're going to identify any neighborhoods that are outliers. So if we have neighborhoods that are falling outside of a 10% margin of the median, we're going to take a look at those neighborhoods as neighborhoods that we might need to apply township level equalization. And any neighborhood we've identified that needs township level equalization, we'll apply that. Once township equalization is done, then we're going to move on to parcel level changes. Posting previous year equalized values in neighborhoods that weren't equalized. This is a step you might not need in some counties. You need to speak with your county assessor, or if you're in the county, you need to understand your internal processes. In our county, it's essential to have that posting plus the new construction posting so that new construction value can be properly captured. We'll post any demolitions. We'll post new construction. We'll make sure we post an HIE for property that has homestead exemptions on it so they can have the benefit of that homestead exemption. And then the final step is we're going to bring any partial assessments up to full value. So because our new construction cutoff is typically in June, that means we may post a new house that's 80% complete. So for this year, we need to have a posting that's capturing that additional 20% of value for that property. We're going to bring other assessments to full value that were maybe 1 year changes like fire damage. And also we're going to look at our open space. So this is very high level. I just wanted to walk through all of these topics. Any questions on this before we begin the panel portion of the discussion? Okay, so we're going to start with Kindle because if you have a township formulation within your county, you're going to start with the county assessor who's going to give directives to the township assessors. So we're going to start with Kendall, our supervisor of assessment. What do you do to prepare your township assessors for the new year?
We try to meet as close to about January 1st as we can. Because we're such a small county, there's actually no zoning in our county at the county level. We have one city in our county that actually has zoning. So we compile lists of all the building permits and we give that to that township assessor. We also, throughout the year, when tax bills go out, taxpayers come in and say, hey, I tore this building down or something's wrong with this building. We let the township assessors know. So we have a list of that. Also, we keep lists of 911 addresses. When EU 911 issues a new address, we keep a list of that just in case there's some new construction. So we compile lists for our assessors as a guide so they know where to go, because without building permits, they have to drive every single property in the county. So we try to help them out as much as we can. We also give them the sales data because we keep all that. We process all transfer declarations and everything here at the county level. So any sales transactions, we keep track of all of that and let our township assessors know what things are selling for out in the county. And basically, any changes that we find along the way, we let the assessors know. So it's just kind of a way we try to guide them as much as possible to help them out, because there's just not a whole lot of resources in a small county like us, because we're pretty much rural agricultural county. But we try to do what we can to get the assessors as much information as possible.
That's great. So that's another setup. Lisa, can you give us an overview of what this looks like? So you have a large township. So what does this look like in your county where you're doing a lot of the assessor and some of those tasks at your level?
So we have about 16,000 parcels in Quincy Township. So at the beginning of the year, we look at all the building permits. Unfortunately, not everybody's getting building permits. They're doing things under, can you imagine not getting a building permit? I know. So, we are finding, and it's getting worse more and more. People are not getting them. So we're finding a lot of things that people are not getting, building permits for. So we try to catch everything that we can. Pictometry is the best tool, I think, in my career that's ever been, in my 31 years, pictometry, I think, is probably the best thing that's ever. GIS is incredible. So I love that. Change Finder is incredible, but we don't have it flown every year. It's every few years that we have pictometry flown. So, we use that as a tool. Then we look at all the sales that have happened. We review our owner occupied list. We try to catch everything. We read the obituaries. We look at the transfer declarations, but we're also using True Roll in Quincy Township. I found it to be very, very beneficial. I didn't think we would find many parcels that we were wrong on. I was amazed at how many parcels that they really did find that people were living somewhere else, or they were renting them, or they were using them as Airbnbs. So we are using that in Quincy.
Lisa, one thing, so pictometry is now Eagle View.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
I know, I just wanted to put that out there, and so in case somebody's like, what is pictometry?
Yes, you're right. I am so sorry. I still call
okay.
it pictometry. Yes, yeah, I'm so sorry. Yes, Eagle View. Yes, I can't say good enough things about it. I love it. I think it's wonderful. I wish we could do it every year, but of course our budget does not have that kind of expense in it. Let's see, what else do we do? And I make notes. When I'm driving around town, or my husband and I are going out to dinner, I'm like, oh, I got to look at that next year. So I am constantly making notes, or people call in, people turn their neighbors in more than anybody. My neighbor just built this, or, I'm always making notes throughout the year. And I have a folder probably that thick that I go review in January that, things I need to look at the following year. So I'm always always making notes of things I need to look at the next year. Now we assess as of January 1st. So whatever is there January 1st in Quincy Township is what we value. We do not do instant assessment. So we're a little bit different than you are there, Chesney.
So
So
we don't do the instant assessments, and because that is when someone assesses January 1st at whatever percent completed is, and I
yes.
believe that's no longer allowed, and that's an old timey thing. So
Okay.
we do partially complete we do like as of the date, so a little bit different
Okay. Okay.
and allowed statutorily. That's what.
Okay. I'm
Well,
sorry.
that's
Okay.
a good topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Kendall, do you also use GIS software to detect changes in?
Yes, we just got change finder this year through Eagle View, and we've found a lot of things. I mean, there's just teeny tiny buildings that no one could see that it's just
Sure.
picking up, and it's been amazing. And all of our assessors have access to it, and we printed off all the reports and handed it to them as well, just so it's a great tool. If your county or townships can afford it, I definitely recommend it.
The first time I was teaching a class, there was a little old lady in the class, and she was from a very rural area, and we were having this discussion of what do you do when you don't have permits? And she told me that she stakes out the paving and gravel trucks. She follows them to see where they're going and what they're doing. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Chelsea, did you start this whiteboard?
I did not.
Okay, I'm gonna close out of this then.
Okay. So Kendall, I'm going to come back to you. So in a small rural jurisdiction, what are your expectations for your township assessors? It's going to look a little different, so I want to focus on that.
Yes, definitely. Our townships simply don't have the budgets. Our township assessors make very little salary, so it's more of a part-time seasonal job in rural counties like us. So they don't have the resources to afford any kind of CAMA software. So our township assessors basically go out. There are eyes and there are feet on the ground for us here at the county level. So they're out there picking up, measuring, taking pictures, doing all the field work that goes with the assessment portion. They bring it back to the county, and we process everything here at the county level because we have a CAMA system here. So, but they do all the dirty work, I guess you could say, because they're out there face to face with the taxpayers on their property. They're the ones doing all that and bringing it back here to us for us to process.
So when they bring back that information to you, what is really important on your end so that that information is usable so that you can do what you need to do? What types of things are they including in that field work?
We have like a worksheet that every single township assessor uses. It's asking for any details with the property. What a lot of our township assessors will do is they'll take out the property record card with them, and then they'll draw on any new additions, and they'll put the placement of it on that property record card and turn it into us. But we do have a worksheet that they fill out with all the details, and that's pretty much what we use to put on that. They give us the condition of it or since they're talking to the taxpayers out in the field, they give us any kind of information as far as cost, especially we have a lot of mobile homes, which is very important for us to know, as well as like sales price of those mobile homes. So it's just a worksheet that we give all of them that they basically fill it out for us.
That's great. And I'm sure it would be a lot more difficult if each of those assessors was using a different form to send information back into you. Lisa, you touched on True Roll already. Can you talk a little bit about your processes regarding exemptions and where your township office fits into that?
So we actually in Quincy Township, we just do the owner occupied exemption. The county, they do all the senior exemptions, the veterans exemptions, all of that is handled at the county level. So we just handle the owner occupied exemption. And then of course we tell the county who would qualify for the home improvement exemption also. So we just handle the owner occupied in our office. But TrueWell was, like I said, it really was a good tool for us. The first, like I said, we just started it in 2023. It did find a lot more errors than I thought it would. It was a very good tool for us, definitely. But yes, we handle all the owner occupieds in our office.
Staying on the topic of exemptions, Kendall, do you
Mhm.
mail the senior homestead and freeze exemptions out each year? And if so, when and what are your due dates?
Yeah, for ours, the exemptions are all mailed out right around the 1st of January. We mail out the senior homesteads, the senior freeze, and all the disabled veterans and disabled persons exemptions are all mailed in January. Um, Senior homesteads, this is how we've done it for years. So if we would change anything, I don't think it would work, but we always have it due back by January 31st. So senior homesteads, we try to get those back as soon as possible. Because that also helps us with owner occupieds and things like that to make sure they're still living there. Senior freeze, since it's income based, we do give them an extension till at least after April 15th. So we usually say May 1st to get that back to us. But a lot of our exemptions, I mean, people are really good about getting them back to us as soon as they get them. But disabled persons, disabled vets, we know sometimes it takes time to get that proof into us. So we usually give them till about April to get that back to us.
Lisa, what are the timeframes? Do you know? I know this is occurring at the county, but do you know what the time frame is for your county and whether or not the senior homestead requires annual renewal?
Yes, they do require annual renewal. They do mail them all out. They used to have them out by January 1st. Now they wait about a week. So they go out about the first week. They wait until about like January 7th or 8th. They do have to renew them every year. The senior homestead, I believe they give them until it used to be January 31st. I think they've extended that to like May 1st. And I do know that the freeze is July 1st. So the freeze is due, they do like those freeze exemptions in by July 1st, but they do mail. And then the veterans, they mail all of those out. They mail everything out in January.
So in Lake County, the senior homestead exemption has not required annual renewals, and it's been, I think, close to 20 years since they changed that in Lake County. And our senior freeze renewals and the other exemptions, they're not sent out till the spring. The senior freeze usually is July 31st deadline. And it's all online here too, which adds an entirely new difficult component. But fortunately, we're not having the senior homesteads renewed every year. But Lake County also implemented the True Roll technology. And so there's been a large effort and undertaking at the county level, and a lot of the townships have assisted in that effort as well, trying to clean up the books, specifically with the change in the exemption amounts. Having erroneous exemptions shifts the burden on everyone. It's a big deal. And so I think it's important. It looks like across the state, one thing that we all have in common is we're taking that issue very seriously. And I think all the constituents, all the people that live in Illinois should be happy to know that, because that's one of the few things in our control that we have to help with the heavy tax burden.
Mhm.
Okay. So one of the things I want to jump back on, so we've kind of talked about field work and we've talked about exemptions, but I'd like to talk a little bit about, the valuation piece in a non-quad year. So I wanted to start with the tentative factor. So Kendall, do you have an idea of when you'll have tentative factors?
We have already received ours, and it is 23 was a quad year for us. I like to have as much of my 2023 assessments done before the assessors are out in the field in 24. It just kind of makes things easier for them because they're not getting hit with all the questions. But we got our tentative back, I would say first part of January, middle of January is when I got that back. So that's usually my goal, try to get that tentative back sometime in January.
Is it scary? We haven't gotten ours yet, and I think it's going to be scary.
I had a very big equalization factor in the county this year. So my tentative was great, but I
Okay.
had almost a 10% factor. So it was it was rough.
What about you, Lisa? Have you been given your tentative, or do you have a time frame? What do you think it might be?
I'm with Kendall on this one. So are we talking the 2023? Are you talking 2023 or 2024? I'm sorry,
2024.
2024. Okay, so we have not received a tentative. We have done, we kind of do our own sales ratio study. And then the county does one also. So we have calculated one. And yeah, it's scary. It's our sales have just, I've been in this field for 31 years and I have never seen anything like this. And every year I keep saying it's going to get better. This year is going to be it. I thought 2023 was going to be it. It's going to be better. This is going to be, and it isn't. It's just, I don't even know what to say to some people right now. I've never seen it. I've never seen in Quincy. I have never seen this. Now I know people up north, you guys have seen this, but in
No.
Quincy, we've never seen this. In Quincy, if you saw something sell for $1,000 more than asking price, we're like, what are these people thinking? Are they crazy? Now we're seeing things sell for 20,000 more than asking price. We have never seen this before, but we have seen it these past few years. So my multiplier now, thankfully, our county, Georgine, she equalizes us by township, which I'm very grateful for. But my factor last year, I had a 7% multiplier in Quincy Township. And we haven't had a 7% multiplier probably. And I keep track. I know I have at least 25 or 30 years. I think there was maybe 2 years that we've had a multiplier we're going back a long ways. I had a 7% multiplier last year. And I'll be honest with you, this year we're going to get another large multiplier. I cannot keep up with the sales. I just can't keep up. I cannot. Now our state, because we're equalizing at the township level, we're getting a 1 from the state. But I don't know. I don't know what to do. I really don't know I'm kind of at a loss, honestly. I really am.
Well, do you have townships you're able to equalize individually? Or are you kind of all grouped together?
Neighborhoods, you mean, or?
No, like Kindle,
Oh,
like, do you
I'm
have
sorry.
any, sorry, I mumbled, I apologize. Do you have townships that are getting their own factor, or is it pretty much the whole county for you?
Ours is pretty much the whole county. I only have one township that even has enough sales to do a sales ratio study. So we pretty much lump everyone together. In all honesty, everything is so similar. We're all in the same boat. So it's all one multiplier for the whole county.
And Lisa, I'm assuming your township can be equalized on its own, but I'm
Yes.
assuming you still have an all others there in Adams County.
There isn't all others, but there's a few other townships. There's a tri-township area around Quincy that they have enough to do a sales ratio study also. And theirs were been a little bit higher than mine. So yes, and then there is an all others, definitely. There's 23 townships in Adams County. And I think there were enough, I know there were at least 3 townships that there could be a study done on, and then there was probably 20 that were lumped together.
Okay. And if you're newer to the industry, the threshold is 20 qualified sales. Now remember, any parcel that has a farmland exemption is automatically going to be an unqualified sale because their assessed value is not pertaining to market value. They are receiving a preferential assessment. So on top of having fewer parcels in a rural jurisdiction, oftentimes, even when they do have sales, the sales are not going to be qualified for sales ratio purposes at the state level because they're receiving a preferential farmland exemption. So there are multiple things that come into play there. You could use them for other purposes though, if you just need the data. So we are looking at probably a double-digit tentative factor. And that means on the aggregate, the value in Warren Township and Lake County will need to go up to that extent.
Mhm.
Reality is not all of our current values can truly handle that type of an increase.
Exactly.
Which is why we will be applying township level equalization factors to any properties that are outside of that 10% range.
Mhm.
And so one of the reasons we use the 10% range on the median, that's what's used to calculate the reimbursement. I remember when I first learned it, I was memorizing 0.3233, 0.3533, and those are just silly hard numbers to memorize. And then I realized, oh, that's just 10% in either direction. That's so much easier to remember. It's just 10% in either direction. So when we find something that the neighborhood is an outlier, it's requiring more of an increase in our sales ratio study than what we're given as a range of acceptable values. We'll be applying township level equalization to those neighborhoods. And in doing so, we will reduce that factor that we're going to get from our county after we turn our books in. We don't even have a goal of a 1. I mean, that would just be crazy.
Exactly.
But we are hoping to lessen that and properly distribute that increase to the neighborhoods that are requiring it more. Because our ultimate goal is the fair and equitable distribution of the property tax burden. Um, Let's talk a little bit about, actually, I'm going to pause. And we've just had quite a long conversation about tentative factors and the values as they're increasing. And this is really a big issue across the state. I mean, and we're not alone in Illinois. It's a really big issue. So I'm just going to pause for a moment to give those of you on the call an opportunity to list any questions you might have in the chat box. And if you have a question specifically for Lisa or Kendall, you can just put their name in there or raise your hand, and we can let you ask the question. Amanda will allow you to unmute and ask your question. I'm going to call on someone. So Jeff Lee is on this call, and he's the president of the Lake County Township Assessors Association. And he recently gave us a huge presentation talking about the tentative factor and its impact on values. Jeff, can you kind of recap for Illinois, the great state of Illinois?
Well, the scary thing about the equalization factors is that the 3-year study and your level of assessment that you have now is going to affect years into the future. And it's the good and bad thing about our system, because we ramp up slowly, but we also decrease slowly. Now, our quad was just this past year, and I was predicting that we were going to get a double-digit increase this year. So I was trying to tell people, don't put things at 33 1/3% level of assessment. Try to keep it a little bit lower, say within your 10% range, or actually, I think my goal was like 31% was where I was trying to get my values to, with anticipation of trying to get a one factor this in 2023. It didn't quite happen. I got like a 2% increase on top of all the work I did, but I am anticipating that I'm going to get a 10, 11. Chesney, I'm doing some research. We might get a 15. We might get a 15% equalization factor. And it's blowing my mind that happens. I haven't seen any results from the county yet, but that would be my worst case scenario. I think my best case scenario, I'm probably looking at another 10% increases here. Again, so that was the whole topic of conversation last year. Don't overshoot your mark, because man, if you get there this year and you get a 10 or 15, you're going to have so many complaints, so many appeals, it's almost going to be unmanageable. And the public relations standpoint is going to be it's going to be terrible. I mean, and then I hate to always think about this, but then election is in 2025. We're going to be pounding them with a increase in spending. We're going to pound them with increase in valuation. Taxpayers are just going to throw their hands up in the air looking for change from everywhere, and it's tough. Getting back to neighborhood level equalization, we're going to try to get everybody to that uniform platform, whatever it is, so that everybody can hopefully take this equalization factor we're going to get. However, it's the dog chasing its tail scenario. If you reduce areas, your equalization factor is going to go up. So I mean, you can be setting people up at a certain level of assessment, but at the end of the day, you're still going to get an increasing factor. It's going to be really tough. It's going to be very difficult to apportion the value changes that we need to make and to limit potential appeals. It's going to be a nightmare.
Jeff,
Is that enough of my doom? Is that enough of my doom and gloom
Thank you.
speech? That's my doom and gloom speech. We're in trouble.
Jeff, it's so interesting. I have this conversation with my SA almost weekly. Exactly what you're talking about. It is. You're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. We have this conversation. Oh my gosh, I'm glad we're not the only ones having this conversation. I feel so much better after hearing it from you. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir.
Tax year 2024, I anticipate to be a shared trauma among assessors, the likes of which we haven't seen since 2010. And I know that wasn't maybe as big of a deal in some of the rural areas. I
Right.
did realize that at the time. They didn't have maybe what we had, but I think that this one's going to bond us all equally in our shared trauma.
Mhm.
One of the things that we do differently when we look at township equalization versus revaluation can be very granular. I mean, at the neighborhood level, we've got subdivisions delineated by style because we have a lot of properties and we've got a lot of closings, and that's not going to be the same everywhere. But one of the things we're going to do different with the township equalization is even when we apply it, we'll be doing so with a broader brushstroke, so to speak. We're not going to be so granular. If I have a neighborhood, for example, I have a neighborhood that's going to require equalization. I looked at it and then I looked at it and then I looked at it and it's just going to need it. And that neighborhood is Granwood Park, and we have 1-story houses and split levels, and they're in their own assessment neighborhoods because they sell a little differently. And our cost program kind of prices split levels a little higher than 1-story homes. And for township equalization, though, it's going to be the whole subdivision for me. I'm going to run my sales ratio analysis on, and I'll have plenty of sales. I have plenty of sales at the granular level. So we're taking a little bit of a broader brushstroke, but for us, it's important to find the low hanging fruit and kind of bring it up where everyone is. It'll help eat up some of that equalization factor and hopefully help a little bit more spread that burden. In areas like ours, where we have a larger number of lower value properties than we do high value properties, but we have some high value properties, the quantity of sales hangs in the lower value range, which means that our factor is truly being driven because it's a numbers game, a quantity game when you look at calculating the median by those lower properties. And a 10% increase on $100,000 is 10,000. A 10% increase on a $600,000 property that actually requires more marketing time and certainly isn't increasing at the same rate as the low end is $60,000. So you got to remember the equalization factor. Some people like to argue, well, it's the same percentage. It affects everyone equally. My argument is no, it doesn't, because dollar amount is dollar amount, and that matters too. So that's just another thing to consider. And I think it's important when you're running sales ratio studies to look at it from each angle. And one of the things I've realized and why I'm really excited that IPAI has the ethics course is the longer I've been doing this, the less my struggle is the technical side of it. I know how to run a sales ratio report, right? Okay, I'm good. But I'm not good, because the more you understand, the more that you deal with really the ethical portion of what am I going to do and what is fair. That's very, very hard. And our office is large enough that we are able to have these arguments where we switch sides and take different perspectives and kind of, we kind of argue it out within the office. But if you're in a smaller jurisdiction, call the other county assessors, find out what they're doing, take different perspectives. That way, when you determine what your path forward is, you can feel pretty confident that you took the time that should be taken. You took the time that was due this discussion, and that you really considered, all of the various outcomes and paths forward that you could take when you settle, because there is no perfect way forward. I'm sorry. There's no right way to move forward in these types of situations. I'm going to pause again to see if there are any questions from the audience here. Okay. I want to ask you both for a little bit more clarification on the importance of how you're posting and capturing data. So Kendall, can you talk a little bit about the process of, the valuation process and how you capture new construction and how important that is and how it's calculated?
As far as new construction, goodness, because yeah, the prices and everything are crazy right now, but we try to stay as uniform as possible, even though, it's just one of those things. New construction, I think we've kind of across the board, we've gone, I think, 10% higher than what it has been in the past. So all new construction is handled the same. As far as capturing that, that's basically how we're trying to get that, is just try to stay uniform. Assessors turn everything in, try to get as many pictures. We're trying to make sure the uniformity is the biggest importance, I guess. Is that answering the question? I don't know if I'm
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, what does that process look like for you? And then maybe you could speak a little bit to the importance of properly capturing new construction.
I actually agree with Kendall. So we have a CAMA, but unfortunately, I'm having to put such large factors on my CAMA right now. It's incredible. I feel like, why can't they update the CAMA to where the market is? But I'm just trying to do what the market is, what things are selling for in the market. So I'm just trying to apply what things are selling for in the market to all new construction. So that's what I'm trying to do, to the best of my ability with, the building permits, what things are selling for right next door. Unfortunately, we have a housing shortage in Quincy, so there's not nearly enough building going on there's definitely a higher demand than supply. We definitely have a supply and demand issue going on right now. So they can't build them fast enough. We don't really have a lot of empty lots in Quincy. In fact, in our downtown area, they are actually demoing properties, and builders are finally going in there and building in areas where we never thought they would build.
Oh, wow.
Yes. In fact, we have a 31 unit townhome complex being built in an area where 15 years ago, we would have never thought they would build these homes. In our downtown district, they are building like they're older buildings, and we have a lot of 100-year-old buildings in Quincy, very historic area. They're putting high rent apartments up above these stores downtown. That's probably, my downtown area is a very hard area to value because there's not a lot of resale going on. It's in the TIP district. That's probably my hardest area to value. But as far as new construction goes, that's what I'm trying to do too, is what is the market bringing? That is what I am using. I use the CAMA, but like I said, my factors that I'm using they're crazy. The factors I'm having to put into the CAMA just to bring them up to the market.
That is crazy. So our process is a little different. I'm going to give it real quickly, and then we're going to go to a question in the chat box. So what we had in our quad is we adjusted our CAMA numbers, and that's what we typically do, to our market at the neighborhood level. So very granular. So we'll leave those be and apply a township equalization factor where necessary. So when we go to add new construction, we'll look at our CAMA cost for the new construction, but then we don't stop there. We will apply any township-wide factor that was received in the quad, so last year, 2024 factor. Ours was 1, hallelujah. That's easy. But we'll also take that cost and apply any township equalization that was applied this year. So if we have a neighborhood that we applied an equalization factor of, let's say 5%, when we calculate the cost of the new construction, we'll add that 5% onto it as well before we add it. And it's really important to properly capture your new construction because the taxing bodies can collect on that value without it affecting their limiting rates. So you want to make sure if it's new construction that the county is able to see that it's new construction and calculate how much was new construction. And oftentimes, and I don't know if it's the same way in rural areas, you guys can speak to this, but we, in our office, Charlie, my boss, he'll get calls from the taxing bodies asking how much new construction do you anticipate collecting for the year, because that helps them in their budget planning process. Is that something that you, do you get those phone calls, Kendall, Lisa?
We're not PTEL, so
Not
we don't have to
PTEL,
worry
okay.
about that. So, but I do get the calls every year from all the different taxing bodies wanting to know what the magic EAV is going to be for the year.
Okay.
And honestly, it's a shot in the dark a lot of the times, but I do get those calls. But see, we're not PTEL, so I don't have to. We can, yeah, they can go as high as they want to.
Lisa, are you PTEL?
We are not PTAL either. No,
Okay.
no. And I'm like Kendall, I get the calls, because they all want that. They want to capture everything, so they want to capture everything they can, but we are not PTAL. So we don't have to worry about that.
Interesting. So we've got a question in the chat. The question is, my township equalization factor from the county is over 9%, but the tax rate will be lower. We don't care about the tax rate, that's on them. How do you as a new assessor in a small rural county try to lower this equalization factor? So what you have available to you, and you need to talk to your county assessor as well, because they should be giving you instruction on what they're looking for. But statutorily, you have the authority to apply township equalization factor. And you can apply it by property class, you can apply it by neighborhood, it's really open to you. So the only way that you can, there's 2 ways. The first way is to be very intentional about the sales qualification process and make sure that you eliminate any sales from your ratio study that are unqualified and shouldn't be in there. Outside of that, you have the authority to apply township equalization factor to neighborhoods that are requiring more than 9% increase. So you'd have to perform a sales ratio analysis, apply a township equalization factor to those parcels that are requiring larger adjustments, and that would bring down your overall factor and make it more manageable. Our goal is to have a factor below 5% because we feel that that is just an easier pill to handle. Now, in terms of having a factor that's under 5%, that means we're going to be raising some people significantly more. However, those values can handle the increase. Not a clear answer, but that's what you have as an option. Stephanie asks, does everyone find themselves making administrative procedural changes each year? Are most tasks and duties business as usual from year to year? First, the quad year is always special. That's that's your special year. So year 2, 3, and 4, are going to be very similar. But the quad year is always very, very, very different. Statutorily speaking, you have a higher burden and expectation of what you're supposed to do. It's actually laid out in statute. You got more work to do in a quad year, and you have more freedom with which to do it. In a non-quad year, you're not allowed to revalue. You can apply equalization only. And if you need to change a property, you have to revise and correct that property. And these are different things. Revaluation is not the same as equalization. So it is different. One of the things that we determined through board of review last year for our township is that we have some additional land factors that need to be applied at the parcel level due to nuisances. So on those properties that we've identified, we want to apply a negative land factor. We will be posting those changes as assessor corrections. That way we meet the standard as laid out in statute to revise and correct the assessment. So it's not just a revaluation, we're revising it and correcting it because this factor that should have been there wasn't there. If you're making changes year to year, can you please share an example of a major change and how you implemented it? I'm not sure what type of change you're asking. Would you mind unmuting and giving us a little more context here?
Yeah, I was just more kind of not necessarily in like like applying changes in assessment, but like just kind of procedural, like office, like how you maybe track things or, kind of within the office, I guess, like I said, kind of more administrative, like how you handle processing things. Because I feel like we're always trying to improve and it's like trying to not change everything every year, but find the happy balance.
I don't know if I'm answering this, but I'm gonna guess, I'm gonna try to answer this. And my answer is that we improve our processes when the opportunity presents itself. And it might not be yearly. Kendall, Lisa, do you have a different answer to this?
A lot of times if we see something's not working, we usually wait until the quad year and then we kind of just, okay, let's reset. And that way we have a good starting point for everything. Quad year is always the reset button for us.
Yeah. But on another note, so for example, you both sounds like transitioned and are using True Roll. You aren't? Okay, only Lisa is?
Not yet.
So I know in our county that changed that whole process from top to bottom at the township and the county level. So that change in software or the addition of that software forced a change in order, because it's different. So we had different processes that need to happen and we had access to different types of information.
Yeah, I guess kind of my question, I don't think I'm articulating it very well, but yeah, kind of like how, like, finding the balance, because it's always like, wait, not just using excuse, well, this is how we've always done it, but still appreciating the historical knowledge and growing pains that about the office may have already gone through. But yeah, like I said, finding that balance between trying to make things work better, but also respecting what you don't know.
That's a good question. And when when you've reached those points where maybe there's an option to do it differently, I think it's essential that you talk to the people that have this institutional knowledge and what do you see going wrong. Now, if their answer is that's just how we've always done it, that's not an answer. So, there's two things. Like you have to respect people that have lived through different times, but the times are changing. So, you want to pay homage to the past while also looking to the future. So I think it is essential to have those conversations and to identify potential pitfalls. A potential pitfall doesn't always mean don't do it though. Sometimes it just means understand you may need to navigate this issue. So for example, when our county decided to require that all exemptions and appeals were filed online, us at the township in our office, who we'd all been here a long time, we were just like, whoa, I don't know how this is going to work. These seniors are not going to like this, whatsoever. And there were some growing pains with it. What we ended up doing was we just said, you know what? Yep, this is difficult to navigate. This is going to require some of them to seek out assistance, maybe that they didn't need to before. But what we're going to do is we're going to be here to help them with it. And we're going to do it for them. So we turned it around in our office to a really positive interaction that we have with our property owners. And every time they come in now for an exemption, because it's doing the freeze online, I mean, they're smarter than me if they can figure it out without coming in for help for us that have like gotten trained on this. But when they come in for that purpose, you know, we're typically explaining more about the tax cycle. We're encouraging them to tell their friends about the senior exemptions because it's so heartbreaking when you find people that haven't been getting an exemption and they still got it. So that's a good question. Lisa, you've been around for a while. What's your perspective coming? I'm like in the middle. So
I definitely think that, you know, when I took over in 2016 for my predecessor, there were things I thought, you know what, when I go in there, I'm going to change everything and I'm going to do it my way. You know, you have these great plans and they don't always work out, but you figure your own way. You know what? I mean, and I agree with you, Chesney, like there are some things that if it's wrong, then you need to correct it. And things take time. Like I have the best of intentions. Like I didn't even, there was no CAMA when I came in. There was no nothing. So I thought, you know, I'm going to get this CAMA system and we're going to get this up. We're going to be getting done in a year. I am still populating my CAMA. I mean, it's a process. Everything takes time. So I think, you know, as long as you have good intentions and you're working for things in the right way, it takes a lot more time because I mean we just don't have the manpower and things like that. But I think change is good. Change is hard. Change is definitely hard. But you know, you have to do what you think is right. And as long as it's legal and the right thing to do and you feel good about it, I'm all for it. But I totally understand. It's a process.
I truly think there are portions of the assessment process and the property tax cycle that you just can't learn in a book or in a class.
Mhm.
And my first time that I valued the properties, my first quad, was during the recession. And there are some mistakes I made that time around that I didn't understand until I looked back with a retrospective nature. And then the next quad, I made some different mistakes and I look back, and every quad I've done, if I am in the future and looking back, I realize, oh, I need to do this different, or I screwed up in this way and I can do that better. And then add on top of that, the nature of real estate changes and what matters in real estate and what someone's willing to pay more for or what someone's willing to even buy. All of that changes. Did you know sunken living rooms are coming back? The people like them again. And all we do is we follow those trends, which are always changing and always moving. Mid 2000s, when I, was new in this industry, everybody wanted a 2-story open living room, right? They don't anymore. They don't want that anymore. Prior to COVID, everybody wanted a totally open floor plan. Everybody got stuck home with their family and they want to close some doors. So it's changing, and so that's just you have to change, but you want to be very intentional when you do change. And the most I can tell you, the most important thing you can do, I truly believe this, is to talk to your fellow assessors. Reach out to other people that have been doing it longer. Reach out to people that are new, that have some new ideas and fresh perspective. We're here as a community. Nobody's getting any credit for this class. Lisa and Kendall put in the effort to put this together and are volunteering here for the benefit of assessors in Illinois, and you didn't have to pay for it, so it's not even funding Amanda's salary. That's how important this is to the IPAI Board of Directors and to all of us in the industry. So the number one thing you can do, make those connections, reach out to other people. And when you turn around and you're the smart one with all the ideas, be willing to jump on a call like Kendall and Lisa. Oh, they all want a 1-story ranch. Yeah, you called it. I don't know what your name is. I'm pretty sure maybe something with an S, Susan, maybe. But yeah, everybody wants a ranch now. And we've seen that as being a really driving force, specifically in the suburban area. My understanding, though, is in more rural parts of the state that they don't really care quite so much about the style of a house like they do. Oh, Kindle, yeah.
They don't. They want rural properties with acreage is what we're seeing.
And they're probably not concerned with how close it is to the highway. Maybe they don't want to be close.
Yeah, and yeah, a lot of people want that acreage and we've seen houses that, I mean, are almost falling down, but if they have acreage out in the country, they are paying high prices for it. So
I'm assuming that your land value probably carries an even higher allocation of the value of a property than it may in some.
yeah. Mhm.
All right. We have hit the 11 o'clock mark, but if you really had another question, we'll hang on a few minutes to answer any additional questions you might have. And if you want to be anonymous, just put anonymous first and I won't call your name out when I read it. You can send it directly to me so everyone doesn't see it. I've been doing that when I've been teaching now. I'm like, you can ask a question on Zoom right to me and no one will know that it was you and I won't tell them. Rural acreage on a good blacktop road. Okay, so they don't want a gravel road, but they want the acreage. Amanda, any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank all of our presenters and panelists today. Thank you, Chesney. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Kendall, for volunteering your time and sharing your perspectives here. I do want to thank you all for joining us today and for asking your questions. We do plan to do these quarterly in 2024. We'll probably, as we did with this webinar, announce it a couple weeks ahead of time. So make sure that you are getting the IPAI newsletters and emails and checking our social media. That's where we'll advertise these next webinars. And then if you haven't already, please check out our 2024 schedule. Registration is open for everything this year, everything from our state conference to online courses and our regional workshops. So we hope that we see you sometime this year, either in person or online. Otherwise, we'll stick around for a little bit, but we'll go ahead and adjourn this. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.